What a day. 2 state prisons, back-to-back, Folsom, San Quentin. Unbelievable. Never thought I could get into either place. And yet they treated me like a VIP. I took pictures of everything with permission. And they were so nice and cooperative and welcoming. It was an incredible experience. Folsom, to walk in the same footsteps as Johnny and Saul did in 1968 was an experience that I can't even put into words. I think I'll have to decompress for a couple of weeks before I can really write it down and remember it and think about it. But oh, what an amazing experience.
Hello, I'm Johnny Cash. I hear the train a-comin', it's rollin' around a bend, and I ain't seen the sunshine since I don't know when. I'm stuck in Folsom Prison, and time keeps dragging on. But that train keeps a-rollin' on down to San Antone. When I was just a baby, my mama told me, son, always be a good boy, don't ever play with guns. But I shot a man in Reno just to watch him die. When I hear that whistle blowing, I hang my head and cry. I bet there's rich folks eating from a fancy dining car. They're probably drinking coffee and smoking big cigars. Well, I know I had it coming. I know I can't be free. But those people keep a-moving, and that's what tortures me. Inside the walls of prison, my body may be, but my Lord has set my soul free. There's a gray stone chapel here at Folsom, a house of worship in this den of sin. You wouldn't think that God had a place here at Folsom, but he saved the soul of many lost men. Now this gray stone chapel here at Folsom stands 100 years old, made of granite rock. It takes a ring of keys to move here at Folsom, but the door to the house of God is never locked. Inside the walls of prison, my body may be, but the Lord has set my soul free. San Quentin, you've been living hell to me. You blistered me since 1963. I've seen them come and go, and I've seen them die. And long ago I stopped asking why. San Quentin, I hate every inch of you. You cut me and you scarred me through and through. And I'll walk out a wiser, weaker man. Mr. Congressman, you can't understand. I want you to, if you don't mind, Carl, I'd like you to stay out and help us on some songs. Play the guitar.
Love to.
One of the greatest guitar players as well as songwriters and singers in the business. Appreciate a little help on the guitar, all right?
Love it.
Thank you, Carl. Well, my daddy left home when I was 3, and he didn't leave much to Ma and me, just this old guitar and an empty bottle of booze. Now, I don't blame him 'cause he run and hid, but the meanest thing that he ever did was before he left, he went and named me Sue. Well, he must have thought that it was quite a joke, and it got a lot of laughs from lots of folks. Seems I had to fight my whole life through. Some gal would giggle and I'd get red, and some guy'd laugh and I'd bust his head. I'll tell you, life ain't easy for a boy named Sue. Well, I grew up quick and I grew up mean. My fists got hard, my wits got keen. Roamed from town to hide my shame. But I made me a vow to the moon and stars. I'd search the honky-tonks and bars and kill that man that gave me that awful name.
One, 2, 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock, rock. 5, 6, 7 o'clock, 8 o'clock, rock. 9, 10, 11 o'clock, 12 o'clock, rock. We're gonna rock around the clock tonight.
In 1957, Saul produced his first rock and roll show. He lost money at first. If he made any at all, it was usually less than $100. The next year, Saul brought Buddy Holly, Chuck Berry, and Jerry Lee Lewis to cities across Ontario. Looking for the next big thing, my father opened Saul's Square Boy restaurant, the first drive-in in town with push-button voice ordering from your car. But it was his food that was truly innovative. Saul offered square hamburgers with, you guessed it, a slogan.
4 extra bites for your money.
And though he didn't know the first thing about country music, he promoted most of the big stars of the day. But one singer would change his life forever.
I brought Johnny in to help publicize the restaurant, and we just didn't hit it off at all. That was in 1958. And then I brought him back in 1959, and we had a terrible argument, horrible argument. And I made some remark to him that he's just like the rest of them. And Johnny doesn't like to think of himself as like being the rest of them. And he suddenly recognized me as an entity rather than just some passing face in the night. And I booked him on another tour, and we hit it off.
It was Saul who pushed me to take my show and my career to another level. I was perfectly happy where I was, doing what I loved to do and getting paid for it. But after I got to know Saul, I started liking his ideas. Saul said I should be aiming at Europe, the Orient, and big places in big cities. And that could just be the beginning.
And my manager, Saul Holiff, said, we need a girl singer on the show. They want more than just you and your band. I said, we'll get one. He said, what do you think about June Carter? And I said, I've always been a fan of hers. And I had, I loved her work. I said, get her if you can. So we booked June Carter on the Big D
to Dallas, and then that night my manager asked her if she'd work the next tour with us.
And the key led to a storage locker, and as it turns out, Saul had kept everything, not just from his time with Johnny, but about his whole life. In all, there were over 26 cartons of material, and it was just flabbergasting.
And including that material, these audio diaries that your father he taped telephone conversations with Johnny Cash. Why did he do that?
Well, first of all, that was the biggest surprise. I didn't set out to write a documentary or a book. I came to this reluctantly as a hostile witness, and I realized that I couldn't move past my father, and that this represented an opportunity for me to sort of wade into my father's life and explore him and try to understand him and hopefully make peace with him. But when I discovered those diaries, the audio, more than 60 hours, it became apparent that it could become a documentary.
Why did he make those tapes?
Well, he made them for several reasons. One, believe in psychiatrists or shrinks. He would never see one. So I believe that first and foremost, it was a form of self-analysis. As for the telephone calls, that's a slightly more complicated issue, but I can say that it was never to have the goods on Johnny Cash. It was never to write a tell-all book. Saul was retired and not working for 40 years. He had plenty of time to do those things, but he never did. It wasn't his style. The reason he did it was because I found in exploring these materials, starting in the early 1960s, because Johnny was so addicted to pills, he had a split personality. There was the good Johnny and there was the bad Johnny. And the bad Johnny didn't have a very good memory. And consequently, Saul would set up dates and fees and locations, and then the next day Johnny would say, I didn't agree to that. So Saul started a practice, as evidenced in these letters that I found, of having witnesses to their conversations so that he could later say, John, listen, you did agree to this, and we are doing this. And when technology allowed, when it became possible to tape phone calls, that was just an extension of that.
Okay, Jonathan, you've been kind enough to let us to lend us one of these. I don't even know if this has ever been heard before. One of these telephone conversations, the audio of it. I want to play a bit of it here. We've got one of those conversations. This is between Saul Holiff and Johnny Cash, recorded in 1972. Here they're talking about the Gospel Road, the movie about the life of Jesus that Johnny starred in. The first voice you'll hear here is Johnny Cash.
Now, there's a couple of things I want to say to you that I need to clear the air completely with you on.
Mm-hmm.
First of all, I knew way before I even did the film that there's a lot of people, maybe the majority of the people, are not going to buy what I'm saying in this film or what the film is saying. So you see, I don't really have to be told that because I know that.
I haven't, you say you don't have to be told that, but who said that?
You did. You said, in the dressing room at Saratoga, you said you realize, of course, that a lot of people are not going to agree with your film.
Well, when I make a statement like that, that's what is known as trying to be honest, because, first of all, if you take 100 people, 25 of them are Christian faith and 20 of them are Muslims, and 10, that's what I meant.
Yeah, but I knew that originally, see.
Yeah.
Well, I just felt like that you didn't have a lot of interest in this film, and I just wanted to know if you don't, then I'll go ahead and do what I can do without you.
I'm one of the few people that try to say to you exactly what they think without meaning to be harmful. I'm not trying to break things down. I'm just trying to maybe temper things a little bit by saying not exactly what people think you want to hear.
Yeah, right.
I find a lot of people tell you exactly what you want to hear.
Yeah, I know that. I don't need that either.
And that doesn't help.
No, it doesn't.
Well, that's Saul Holiff talking to his client, Johnny Cash, there. And Saul Holiff, who managed Johnny Cash from 1960 to 1973. I'm speaking to Jonathan Holiff, his son, who's writing a book and making a documentary film about the life of his dad managing Johnny Cash. Jonathan, I've got so much to ask you. There's so much here. I appreciate you coming up. Before I let you go, now that you, in the course of making this documentary and writing this book, and now that you're getting this insight into your dad's life and Johnny Cash, what do you think about Saul now?
I think I've made peace with him. I have to tell you, listening to my father's voice when he was my age, I'm 42 now, and these diaries started around the time he was my age, was a very spooky and emotional experience. A few months ago, my father killed himself, and he didn't leave a note. But then, I found his storage locker.
The situation was that Johnny Cash was on the floor of the motorhome, totally unconscious. For all intents and purposes, he was dead. I brought Johnny in to help publicize the restaurant in 1958, and we hit it off.
Saul said I should be aiming at big places in big cities.
Growing up, I only saw my father a couple of weeks at a time. Then he would be gone again, on tour with Johnny.
I fell into a burning ring of fire.
We have just about the best of everything in our lives, and so do our children.
I didn't recognize anyone in these photos. Who were these people? Until I found these pictures, my childhood was a blank.
Johnny Cash was arrested yesterday in Texas. The singer is charged with smuggling drugs across the Mexican border.
I'm two people. Johnny is the nice one. Cash causes all the trouble.
I'm falling apart, physically and emotionally. It is not a very pretty picture.
You found a bunch of memorabilia in your father's storage, and that is how this whole film came about. Can you give me more details on that experience?
Yeah, I mean, it was very emotional. My father had just killed himself, and I hadn't talked to him in 20 years. So for me, it was really about getting to know my father through what he left behind, and the stuff that was in that locker was the stuff that he felt was most important to him. It was just a kicker that it happened to include all this Johnny Cash memorabilia.
And I know that the film obviously shows most of this, but what was the most shocking thing that you found in that storage locker?
Well, there were many shocking things. There were shocking things about my father. There were shocking things about Johnny Cash. But for me personally, I wasn't there for the Johnny Cash story. The most shocking thing to me was to discover that my father wasn't the hard ass that I grew up with, but was actually a guy who led this rich emotional life. But because he was a 1950s guy, and he wouldn't talk to his wife about his problems or admit anything but everything is great, dear, he dumped all of his problems, including his problems with Cash, onto these tapes. And this is contemporaneous stuff, so it was really mind-blowing to listen to it and to learn that my father was really self-aware and very complicated and ultimately a tragic figure.
And did you ever have any experience with Johnny Cash personally yourself?
Yeah, I was 9 months old on my first Johnny Cash tour. Forgive me if I don't remember that tour. But growing up, my brother and I spent a lot of time around Cash. I guess I felt great in school because my mom would come and pull us out of class as kids and take us to wherever Johnny and Saul were playing in North America. And invariably, it seemed the only time I got to see my dad was in some green room, in some stadium, in some American city, backstage. But I loved it, and Johnny always spoiled us. He knew that my father had outlawed candy in our home. So the first thing he did was grab handfuls of candy and give it to us, just to get my father's back up.
Okay, and can you explain what the title of the film means?
Well, My Father and the Man in Black. My father was Johnny Cash's personal manager from the 1950s to the 1970s, and he was my dad. So rather than call it Saul and Johnny, it's My Father and the Man in Black.
Okay, and I understand that you had a very strange relationship, which you already brought up. Did you get any answers from going through all that footage and all that audio about your father and why he was the way he was?
I did get a lot of answers. I mean, imagine having an experience which is so unusual, like getting to know your mother or your father before and after you were born. not asking them today, what was it like back in the day, but actually hearing them talk about it. So it was very emotional. And the first tape I heard, for example, my father was my age when he recorded it. So I related to the problems he was having in business, with family, with his kids, with his job. Then I ultimately found empathy for him and ultimately reconciliation with him, and forgiveness.
And what made you film and put on display such personal stuff that your father had left behind?
That was a very tough call. I never wanted to be in this movie. I shelved it for a long time because people told me I had to tell the story. But I live in fear of microphones and cameras, so I shelved it, and then I figured that I had to do it as an exercise of catharsis, and I was telling it for myself, and whether or not anybody liked the movie, I didn't care, or particularly care. Of course we all care, but I didn't do it for anybody but myself.
Great, thank you so much, and the best of luck with it. Thank you.
Thank you.
A new book sheds light on Johnny Cash's dark days and the man who got him through it all. I'm Carly Shimkus with Fox 411. The country music star has his manager Saul Holiff to thank for a whole lot, and a new book called The Man Who Carried Cash sheds light on their unique relationship. Author Julie Chadwick spoke to Fox News, saying Cash's drug addiction was a major issue for the manager. Holiff was the one who had to clean up the mess when Cash famously was arrested in El Paso in 1965 for smuggling amphetamines from Mexico. The manager also struggled getting Cash out of the niche country music scene because he oftentimes wouldn't show up to performances. Later in an interview, Cash said he routinely took 100 pills a day and washed them down with beer. But while Cash struggled personally, his manager was determined to give his life purpose. Turns out it was Holiff who introduced Cash to wife June Carter. He was also behind the San Quentin prison show and album. The two cut ties in 1973, but reconnected before Cash died in 2003. For more on this and other entertainment stories, check us out on Twitter and Facebook at Fox 411.
Unique display at the University of Victoria is shedding new light on the life of Johnny Cash, his connection to his Canadian manager, and also to British Columbia. As CTV's Binder Sajid reports, it's all thanks to a surprise discovery.
Hello, I'm Johnny Cash.
In the shadow of a musical legend was an entrepreneur from Ontario.
It always surprises me that Canadians don't realize that it was a Canadian who managed Johnny Cash to stardom, and in fact hired June and put her with Johnny.
Saul Holiff was with Johnny Cash during some very tumultuous years.
Drugs and arrests in the 1960s, but right up through Folsom Prison and Johnny's big television show on ABC.
Fed up, Saul quit, later settling on Vancouver Island. After his death, his son made a surprising discovery in a Nanaimo storage locker.
I had no idea he had kept one for so many years, let alone that it would be full of Johnny Cash memorabilia.
In total, 5,000 items.
600 letters and 60 hours of audio diaries, and of course the recorded telephone calls with Cash.
The entire collection now housed at UVic Archives.
I was a fan of Cash when I started this, and am probably an even bigger fan now.
The public can also view an online exhibit.
This picture up here of Cash on stage at Folsom Prison, and this is 2 years before the famous concert was recorded.
This mugshot thought to be one of a kind.
To our knowledge, this was taken as a joke with the prison guards because he'd been arrested the year before.
That's Cash with a Canadian beer. This receipt shows one of his gold records was auctioned off in Victoria.
Our family donated the material to UVic because we are proud Canadians.
UVic is also where Saul graduated from, and now it's where he'll take his share of the spotlight. Binder Sajjan, CTV News, Victoria.
The
Hello, I'm Johnny Cash.
London also has an intimate connection to the man in black. Johnny Cash's manager was London native Saul Holiff, and London is where Johnny Cash and June Carter had a very special moment, as seen in the movie Walk the Line.
7,000 people, and he asked me to marry him in front of 7,000 people, but I would have liked it if he would have gotten down on his knees and proposed to me.
Probably the most amazing showbiz moment right here in London, Ontario, was Johnny Cash proposing to June Carter on stage at the old London Garden.
Sorry for the interruption, folks, but I gotta ask Junior a question before we finish this song.
What's that, John?
Will you marry me?
One of the theories is that he did so on stage because it was Saul Holiff's hometown. And it was a way of honoring Saul for his role through the 60s and continuing into the 1970s as his manager.
I walk the line.
Saul, I think, helped Johnny become a megastar. And I think that was really important that, you know, a lot of these country guys, again, were just playing in their communities and they were traveling around the country and they were just being them. And I think Saul kind of created a space where Johnny could learn to be the big man that he ended up becoming. I mean, Johnny has immense talent, and great managers don't make you a star if you don't have it. Johnny had it. Saul just figured out a way to go, that's the guy, and we can do something with him. And maybe 13 of Johnny's best years were with Saul.
As sure as night is.
Many Newfoundlanders are well aware the great Johnny Cash spent time there back in the early 60s, but never before seen photographs show a whole new side to Cash's visit. An undeveloped roll of film was discovered at a garage sale, and when the person who found it realized what he had unearthed, he gave it to the son of Cash's late Canadian manager, who's also in those pictures. His journey down memory lane is our moment.
I first heard about the Johnny Cash moose hunt while researching my documentary about my dad and Johnny Cash. However, I only really had dates and very few details. Color photos of the trip had been online for a couple of years and are quite popular, but I was contacted for the first time roughly 2 months ago by a fellow named Glenn Chator, who is a collector, and came across negatives. I believe it was at a garage sale. I'd never seen photographs of Johnny Cash hunting in this manner, but also there are shots of concerts where he's performing from what appears to be a wrestling ring. Johnny performed from some pretty unusual places, but I had never seen anything quite like that.
Wow, so that's super cool. A really neat piece of history. And, you know, another one of the big mysteries is that they don't know, of course, who took the photographs. And they think, you know, because of how professional they look, maybe it's some magazine photographer, but who knows?
Well, we are starting to learn, though, why this happened. So Johnny Cash, it seems, Saul wasn't his original manager, but he decided to take him on a 10-day hunting trip to Newfoundland just to impress him enough to become the manager. It sounds like it. That is a national for October 15th. Good night.
Good night.
Did you consider this a form of therapy for you because you were just going through a really rough and confusing time, changing your career, and almost your entire life changed during that time?
Yeah, as a matter of fact, that's how it started, right? You know, it was not going to be a book or a movie. It was just me in a storage locker in the middle of winter after my father killed himself, trying to figure it all out. So yeah, it was a form of therapy. And obviously, well, if it's not obvious, the whole process was very cathartic. You know, I was able to find empathy for my father, and that led to forgiveness.
So you really experienced a hero's journey through that whole thing, like the Hollywood hero journey there.
Well, it's thank you for saying that, but that's the thing, you know, even if it's a documentary, you're still kind of hewing to that hero's journey, which is, you know, where the Bible comes from.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and pretty much every story that means something, at least.
Right.
And the cool thing is going through these audio files and everything, that was actually your dad's form of his own therapy, was I assume recording these, all of this, and keeping the book that you found called Life, which is like a scrapbook of everything that he felt valuable, at least.
Right, we're talking about a 1960s archetypical man. Back in those days, it was taboo to visit a psychiatrist, and so he did kind of do therapy, although I don't know if he realized what he was doing or what the effect might have, but he was a guy who liked to keep records, and it's a good thing he did, or there wouldn't have been any movie. But at the end of the day, what I found, and the reason I was able to find that empathy for my father, is because when I was growing up, he was a hard man. He wasn't a touchy-feely kind of guy. He said on tape that at one point that if it all happened over again, he wouldn't have children. That was hard to hear. But, what I learned for the first time in meeting my father before he was my father, this is a guy speaking into a microphone at age 40, and I'm the same age, I was the same age hearing it for the first time, was to meet your parents before they were your parents, and to find out for the first time that my father did have an emotional life. He did register all these things that were going on that I thought he was oblivious to and didn't care. Meanwhile, he was a tortured soul who was just trying to figure things out like all of us.
Do you find yourself keeping things in sentimental reasons in the same sense that your dad did?
I wouldn't use the word sentimental because I don't think I've got a lot of that. I don't think Saul, well, I don't think Saul had a lot of that either. I think it comes from another place, personality traits, people who, might go into law or become an accountant, people who are organized and, balance their checkbook are the types that, keep things, right? But it's interesting you ask. I always was that way. I had a successful business in Los Angeles, but it wasn't until I became a documentary filmmaker that I really started to do it without really realizing, what was going on. Just to be specific, after the movie, that led to a book. And the book led to a university archive. And the university archive led to a nationally televised tribute to my dad on television. And through it all, I have been, keeping his story organized and adding to it as these things happen and learning new things and realizing belatedly that something I thought was meaningless, like a moose hunt in Newfoundland, turns out to be probably the most important story of all.
So yeah, let's go into that. What is your current project now?
Well, this moose story, it's kind of like a fishing story in a sense that it's this big. I knew about the moose hunt. We're talking about the 1961 Newfoundland moose hunt and concert tour. I knew about it because that was where my father and Johnny Cash shook hands on being Johnny's manager. They had been working together for a couple of years. Saul was producing Cash shows in Canada since 1958, but Johnny tapped Saul to be his manager in October 1961. His career had faltered. Elvis had crossed over to popular audiences. Cash had not. He hadn't charted really in any serious way for 2 years. And he wanted Saul to be his manager. And they, talked about it for weeks. And while they talked about it, Saul thought that he could impress Johnny by setting up this tour in Newfoundland because he knew Johnny liked to hunt. And so they show up in Newfoundland, and we're talking about a cast of country and Western royalty. Merle Travis, let's see, who else? Rose Maddox, Johnny Western. It's a fantastic story, and it's what led to Saul calling June Carter, because when he agreed to manage Johnny, he had his own conditions. Johnny had just gotten a drummer at that point. Saul was always complaining, how can you be serious and not have a drummer? When he started with Johnny, it was Johnny Cash and the Tennessee Two. And so when Johnny asked him to manage him, Saul basically said, look, I want to put you on big stages, like Carnegie Hall and the Hollywood Bowl. At the time, he was playing clubs and, high school gymnasiums and shit like that. And Saul said, we need a bigger show. We need more than just you and your band. And so he hired Rose Maddox. And I'll let you guys look up who Rose Maddox was, but she was a great. But she quit in the middle of the tour in Newfoundland, saying that the boys were just too wild for her. And that's what led 2 weeks later to Johnny and June and Ring of Fire and all the way to Folsom Prison and beyond.
It was a very dangerous situation up there on the Newfoundland tour. Cash, of course, was taking pills and had to leave the show for a while. It was a situation where his boys were just giving out. They asked me to do that final spot on the show. I was recording for Columbia Records at that time, and the second highest rated television show in the world was Have Gun Will Travel. They told me that I was playing to 350 million people a week with that theme song of that show. So the people in the audience were familiar with me for that particular thing. Working with Johnny, I usually introduced him in all the shows. So we had an extremely close relationship, and he always felt that I could jump in if necessary. That made it very easy for me to do the fill-in for Johnny when he was not able to perform on those dates. In fact, some of the pictures that I have seen of that particular tour of the Moose Hunt, shot from behind with the back of the stage and then looking at the audience, it is me at the microphone. When I first started with him in 1958, he was straight as a string, did not drink, was not into amphetamines, was having a great time. But as we got into the very early 60s and the amphetamines began to take over, I saw a change in personality. They took control of his personality to the place where we didn't know whether he was going to speak to us, except on stage, or whether everything was going to be the way it used to be.
I had become habituated to amphetamines and barbiturates and alcohol, all three at the same time. I got up to a habit of as many as 100 pills a day and a case of beer. And there's a lot of people OD'd on a lot less than that.
His big downfall, of course, as the world knows, was amphetamines. But the voice would come and go, and there was nothing else to do. So rather than totally disappoint the people and not show up at all, that's what they came to hear, of course, was I Walk the Line of all of his songs. And he did that, and I did the rest. And that was just the way that happened. I had to lie, of course, to the audience and say, folks, he really belongs in the hospital. He's running a temperature of 103, but he knew how disappointed you'd be to be here and not even get to see him. I cannot tell you how many times I lied to protect him. You know, it was just built in, like I would protect my own family. Something you did because you love those guys. You know, we didn't want to see it happening to them, but at the same time, we didn't want the public to know about it either.
Harry Walters was the director of wildlife when he called me and asked me if I would be interested in guiding Johnny Cash. I was in Millertown doing research on moose. They picked me up at Lake Ambrose and we proceeded to the camp. We stayed in a logging camp that had closed for the season. The first thing I remember in the morning was Merle Travis asking us to get out of the sleeping bags and enjoy his coffee. Merle Travis was the gem of the crew. He was witty, always had a joke, sang a lot of his songs. Luther was one in a million. You didn't know if he was a millionaire or a bum. Luther was Luther. Wherever he went, he was loved. Not well liked, he was loved. What I remember so well about Gordon Terry was that he was a very beautiful singer. I can't remember ever hearing anyone that I thought was better. And he loved to sing. And my thoughts was that this guy is really going to go to the top. But I learned after that he was famous as a violin player.
All the boys got 4 or 5 girls. That ain't right. Ain't right. I don't sparkle like a pool of pearls. That ain't right. Ain't right. All the girls are real cute tricks. That ain't right. Ain't right. Everybody but me are getting their kicks. That ain't right. Ain't right. It ain't right. It ain't right. It ain't right.
Saul Holiff was a very highly respected guy, really, because we knew he was Johnny Cash's manager. He was a great guy to be with, always had time to talk to you, and played his part in washing dishes too. But Johnny Cash and I was the same age, 29 I believe. We almost became immediately friends because everything we talked about, we both had a common ground into it. It was a dream of a lifetime too, you know, when I think of it. I remember so much about it simply because I enjoyed every moment of it.
Cowboy went riding out one dark and windy day. Upon a ridge he rested as he went along his way. When all at once a mighty herd of red-eyed cows he saw, plowing through the ragged sky and up a cloudy draw. Their brands are still on fire and their hooves are made of steel. Their horns are black and shiny, and their hot breath you could feel. A bolt of fear went through them as they thundered through the sky, for he saw the riders coming hard, and he heard their mournful cry. Yippee-i-oh, yippee-i-ay, ghost riders in the sky. Their faces gone, their eyes were blurred, their shirts all soaked with sweat. He's riding hard to catch that herd, but he ain't caught 'em yet. 'Cause you've got to ride forever on that range up in the sky. All horses snorting fire, they ride on, hear their cry. As the rider sloped on by him, he heard one call his name. You want to save your soul from hell or riding on our range? Then cowboy, change your ways today, or with us you will ride. Trying to catch the devil's herd across these endless skies. All right, let's hear you, Nanaimo. Yippee-yi. Yippee-yi-oh, yippee-yi-ay. Those riders in the sky, those riders in the sky, those riders in the sky. Yeah!
About the famous Carter family, I think we'd all like to meet your wife. Would you welcome June Carter Cash? June? Nice to meet you.
At that time, I didn't really work with Johnny Cash until December 1961, and we did a show together in Dallas, Texas, and I had 2 little girls, and I was working about 10 days a month, and it was a very nice show that we had together. I enjoyed working with him, and I really was a fan of Johnny Cash's. And his manager, Saul Holiff at the time, and John talked about maybe speaking to me to see if I would work some of the shows with them starting in 1962. And so they bought the 10 days I had every month, and it saved me from trying to get my own 10 days every month, which was kind of hard. That's all I worked because I wanted to stay with my kids, you know.
A few moments later.
We played a place...
Glad this isn't a new hour show. Well, we got plenty of time, really.
I thought somebody would have warned you about me.
Oh, no, they told me nothing. I find this...
didn't?
Oh, no.
Well,
But
okay.
First, they said June is very reluctant to talk, and you'll have to draw her out.
But first... No.
We have to do a commercial.
Well, the commercial. But
Yeah.
first wants his commercial in.
Yeah, we'll do the commercial, and then we'll come back and find out how you two first met.
Okay.
We'll be right back. So anyway, after all these trials and tribulations, he finally said, let's get married.
Johnny Cash straightened himself up, really, and he proposed to me on the stage in front of about 7,000 people in London, Ontario, Canada.
Really?
Yes.
That's really romantic.
It was.
A lot of witnesses.
A lot of witnesses.
That's hard to back out of when you've done.
Scared me to death.
Yeah.
I kept saying, shut up. And my mother was there, my sisters and the Statler brothers, and they kept saying, laughing at me, and I couldn't say anything. I didn't know what to say. And he just stood there and looked at me and grinned.
Yeah.
Until I said something.
And you said yes.
I said yes.
Yeah, good. Well, that's... Well, we'd love to have you do something together before you go. Would you?
That'd be great.
We'd love to do it. Thank you, Jim.
This band here, a Canadian manager for a long time.
Oh, yeah. When I went to work for John, there was a guy named Saul Holiff out of London. And I think he's probably responsible for John being as big as he was, because he got him the deal at Folsom when they did the album. He got the one at San Quentin, and he also got John the TV show. And his son, Jonathan, is working with us on a couple of things right now. And it's kind of strange. It just kind of made a circle, you know. But his dad, I think, was responsible.
Prison shows,
big time.
Prison shows are a big deal.
Yeah.
If somebody, somebody has to do a lot of things to make anything happen. somebody had to do something to get you know, started. I don't have any idea, but somebody did. And if Saul Holiff or somebody other than him hadn't have done what he did, we wouldn't be sitting here today. Because I doubt if John Cash would have ever been a big deal. Because back then, for some reason, Saul could see what needs to be done with John Cash. The fact of it is, show you how much smarter he was than me. When we were going into Folsom, we were talking about this. He's the guy that caused all that, and that is the thing that started John Cash in the stardom. Was that Folsom show. And I remember going out there, and I said, "This thing won't pay for the tape." And so that's how smart I was.
I was standing by my window on one cold and cloudy day when I saw that hearse come rolling, gonna carry my mother away. Will the circle be unbroken? By and by, Lord, by and by, there's a better home awaiting in the sky, Lord, in the sky. I believe this is the first song I ever remember singing with my mom. And not too long ago, just about a year ago, I was in a little church near my home, and I heard a little black boy stand up and sing it like this, with all the heart and soul that I'd ever heard it sung with.
Undertaker, 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 won't you please drive slow? Lord, this lady you are hauling, oh, I hate to see Mama go.
Will the circle be unbroken? By and by, Lord, by and by, there's a better home awaiting in the sky, Lord, in the sky. I remember when I was a lad, times were hard and things were bad, but there's a silver lining behind every cloud. Just poor people, that's all we were, trying to make a living out of black lantern. We'd get together in a family circle, singing loud. Daddy sing bass,
And Mama sang tenor,
and me and little brother would join right in there, 'cause singing seems to help a troubled soul. One of these days, it won't be long, I'll rejoin them in a song. I'm gonna join the family circle at the throne. Oh no, the circle won't be broken. By and by, Lord, by and by. Daddy sing bass,
and Mama sang tenor,
me and little brother would join right in there. In the sky, Lord, in the sky. Play it, Carl. Sing bass,
and Mama sang tenor,
and me and little brother would join right in there. In the sky, Lord, in the sky, in the sky, Lord, in the sky. gentlemen, Miss June Carter. Oh, like this, baby. Hold it like this, honey. We got married in a fever, hotter than a pepper sprout. We've been talking about Jackson ever since the fire went out. I'm going to Jackson. I'm gonna mess around. Yeah, I'm going to Jackson. Look out, Jackson Town.
Let's go on down to Jackson. Go ahead and wreck your head.
Wreck your head.
Go play your hand, you big talking man, and make a big fool out of yourself. Yeah, go to Jackson. Go comb your hair.
Oh, honey, I'm gonna snowball Jackson.
See if I can.
Well, when I breeze into that city, people gonna stoop and bow. All them women gonna make me teach them what they don't know how. I'm going to Jackson. You turn loose of my coat. Yeah, I'm going to Jackson.
Goodbye, that's all she wrote. And they laugh at you and Jackson. And I'm dancing on a pony kid. And reach around town like a scalded hound. With that tail there between your legs. Yeah, go to Jackson. You big talking man.
Oh, you big talking man.
And I'm waiting in Jackson. Down a Japan
Well, now we got married in a fever, hotter than a pepper sprout. We've been talking about Jackson ever since the fire went out. I'm going to Jackson, and that's a fact. Yeah, we're going to Jackson. They never come